Creative Mornings. So yeah, I'm Billy Mays. If you don't know me, I'm a musician primarily under the name Infinite Third, in which the music that you heard playing was my music, and it was an album of mine from 6 or 7 years ago, and it's an album that will play into the story of my life that I'll probably tell you in a few minutes. But that music is like highly based around improvisation and stuff. But before all that, serendipity. When I heard the theme was serendipity, I was like, I had this reaction to it, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I get that. Like, I can work with that. But then I thought about serendipity more, and I was thinking of the title to the talk, which is "Remember You Are Dreaming," which is a phrase that's important to me, which I'll get into in a minute. But the subtitle is "The Accidental Perfection of Everything." And I presented it to Tara, and she was like, that's cool, but can we use the word serendipity in it? And I was like, and I was like, what's going on here? Why don't I like the word serendipity? And I think I figured out why, and it's really stupid. I was in high school in like the early 2000s, and there was a romantic comedy called Serendipity, starring John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale. I never saw the movie. I have no idea if it's good, if anybody's seen it. I like John Cusack, so I don't know. But, so all I remember is that they used this like really, really shitty font, and it turned me off from the word serendipity for a long time. It was like, I don't know, and I'm not even that into like, at this time especially, I'm not like into the aesthetic of fonts and movie DVD covers and stuff, but I think it just caused this aversion that made it really cliche to me to say that something was serendipity. So I looked into the word more, and Wikipedia tells me that it was coined in the 1700s by some guy who was an earl. I don't remember his name, the fourth Earl of Orford, and he literally just pulled it from it was inspired by a book, The Three Princes of Serendip. He just wrote it to his buddy. He used the word serendipity to his buddy in a letter. And somehow that letter, I don't know how does a word in a letter that's made up make it into like our language today, but it kind of blows my mind. It's very serendipitous, and that would happen, I guess. Which, we'll probably say that a lot today, like, oh, isn't that serendipitous? And, you know, that's kind of the point of this talk, I think, is that the definition of serendipity tends to be about accidents and happy accidents, coincidence. And maybe that's another reason I had this aversion to the word, was that it seemed like, you know, such a surface thing that something was a serendipity. Like when you find a penny on the ground and it has your birth year on it or something, like that's serendipitous. And I was like, I prefer like the idea that like pretty much serendipity is just the mechanism that's happening around us, and you know, the times that we recognize like the coincidence of it all and like the events that brought us there are kind of like it's just us being tuned into it. So that's kind of what I want to get to in this meandering talk. And so first I'm like looking around at you guys. It's pretty awesome. There's a light in my eye. There's cameras. There's this curtain. There's this weird art over here that's awesome. It's like bones and stuff. I'm calling out the details of the room just because maybe not everyone's thinking about that, and I just want to take it in. Because part of what I talk about, like, remember you're dreaming, if you're not familiar, I literally make shirts that say remember you're dreaming on them. I have a card that you might see around town, stickers. And it's kind of my thing, and it's been a couple years, and I don't even know what brought me to that phrase or what. And I could probably go into a story about it, but for me, when I say like, remember you are dreaming, whenever you see that phrase, what the experience has been when people see it is that there's this whole range of reactions, and I love that about it. It's vague enough that it's not like obvious what it's saying, even though it's a very direct phrase, like remember you are dreaming right now. You know, like I add the right now, but that doesn't say that. So I think that I look at it personally as the word dreaming is kind of like interchangeable with what we're doing here. Like we like when you're dreaming, there's this endless flow of perception happening at you, and you're just kind of putting your attention on parts of it and choosing things to focus on and like add it to your narrative of what's going on. So personally, I go about it that way, but I understand when people are like, yes, this is, you know, life is but a dream, and you know, they get kind of poetic with it, and I love that too. But I don't particularly like the one that's like, yeah, it's just a dream. We're all going to wake up one day, and then this won't matter. And I don't know, that that one kind of hits me the wrong way when people say that, but everyone gets their own interpretation of it. That's the beauty of it. Okay, so we're looking around at the room, and there's all this stuff happening that we're probably not even taking note of. The sounds, the street that's like busy sometimes, and then it's quiet. But I think it's funny that sometimes I just look at moments, and these are probably these moments that I'm talking about, which I call them like lucid moments. If anyone's familiar with the term lucid dreaming, has anybody heard of that? Okay, so the easy definition is that you're aware that you're dreaming while you're in your dream, and you start messing with the dreamscape because it starts responding to your expectations and stuff like that. So I read a lot of books about dreaming and dreams, and something happened a few years ago, and I don't know if there was like a moment that happened, but I couldn't read these books anymore without just being able to just instantly translate it to life. When it's talking about like your dream is kind of led by your emotions, and anything about attention or focus, I started to just instantly apply it to life. And so when people would talk about lucid dreaming, and that there's this moment where they like everything started to vibrate and they knew they were dreaming, and then something clued them in that they were dreaming, that to me then in the dream world became like, that's what we're talking about when we talk about serendipity. And something that feels serendipitous is that something happened that kind of just reminded you of what was really going on here, all this crazy stuff, and all the seemingly random incidences. Is that incidences? No, it's incidences. Okay. Everything that kind of brings us together, like us in this room, we all have like these stories that brought us here. Even if you start this morning, you woke up from a dream possibly, and maybe you even remembered parts of that dream, and then you did all these things that are part of your routine. You hopped in the shower, but I love just breaking down moments like that. Like you got out of this padded thing that you just like go like comatose on for a few hours every night, and then that's just normal to us. And you wake up and you had all these images in your mind that night, and you have the chance to talk about them to someone, and they're just like, yeah, that's your dream. And they're like, it all seems so normal. Then you get in the shower, you take off fabric that you had on you, covering you for some reason while you were asleep, and you let this like liquid pour over you, and it's all kind of like, yeah, this is what we do. And then you put some substance in you, and your body processes it, and then later on it lets go of it, and then you put some fabric on again. You get into your like little Earth rover, and you're like, all right, I'm in my little space machine. You come over here, and you come in here, and there's all these people, and they all had like similar type of experiences, and that's without going into like the emotions that brought us here. And the emotions are probably, I come to these every month, they're so fun, or I love being around like-minded people, or anything, even beyond that, like, oh, I had my heart broken 5 years ago, so I love getting in, now I'm on this new path, and I need to talk about it and feel inspired, and you get it. So I have this feeling that when you wake up from a dream in the morning and you have this chance to remember your dream, and there's a lot of studies about this. A lot of people who analyze dreaming kind of put it this way, is that in your dream there's so much happening, and there's so many details, and there's so many possible things that you're focusing on, or you choose to focus on or not. And the narrative that ties it all together, like how you can say, oh, I was at my grandma's house, but it wasn't my grandma's house, and then you were there, but it wasn't you, and you tie it all together, and you try to make a narrative, like a story. So I've read, and I kind of agree with this, that when you wake up and you tell the story and you piece it together, it's actually happening there in that order. Like you're kind of living it in that moment. You're giving it the time that it needs to unfold, but really it wasn't unfolding in like a real time type event, and it didn't really all tie together like that. Imagine how many things you left out, like the color of the walls and stuff like that. So it's this kind of retrospective thing that I really appreciate, because if I talk about my morning today to get here, I'm doing it in retrospect. I wasn't even really telling the story as I went. So now I have a reason to tell the story, and I'm tying it together with all these narrative things, and I have so many choices in that. And that's my creative power, is to kind of choose the little details that I want, or what inspired me to make a decision that day, or the days leading up to this. So my point with all that is that's very similar to dreams, is that we do this. We're doing this up to this point. We're like constantly telling that story. And it's like everything up until this moment was a dream, and you're just telling it and making it all make sense in linear time. So what I was going to do to kind of let you guys in and learn more about me was I was going to kind of do that right now and just kind of start at my birth and jump really quick to now. And we'll see what details I put in or leave out. So I was born in 1986. I'm 30 years old, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My mom and dad got divorced when I was like 3. And my dad went his separate way and like followed his ambitions and traveled. And I got to see, I was very close with him, but not physically, but we would talk a lot, and when he came to town, we'd spend all the time together. And my mom raised me as a single parent, and I was an only child. And I was way into music and stuff. You know, growing up, I was a child actor, which maybe a lot of people don't know, but I was in a lot of commercials and modeling gigs of like Ninja Turtles bed sheets. I swear this picture exists. And so I did that for a while, and then I hit the awkward stage, middle school, and they didn't want to hire me anymore because I had braces and I got chubby. And I totally understand because I felt like I was hideous as well. So then I went to college for, 2001, this movie comes out called Serendipity, and it totally turns me out. Anyway, so then I go to college in Florida, and I go for recording arts and entertainment business, and this is when I get to kind of connect with my dad because he was living in Florida, and my dad had this whole other thing where he was very ambitious, and he's a pitchman on TV. He was a guy that he passed away. Anyway, I won't go into that, but I got to live 4 years with him, so that was kind of like my time to connect with my dad, and in that time I was making music, and my mom is like the biggest fan of my music. I should say that because I feel like it's one of those things that really made it okay to like make not good music, and then it's like, okay, well at least someone thinks it's good. But maybe it kind of messes you up in another way that now it's like, why don't you love the music as much as my mom does? Like, are you crazy? Like, does she not have good taste? I don't know. So then I'm connecting with my dad. I'm kind of working with him in TV production, behind the scenes. I'm kind of like helping him with his career, and I love it, and really inspiring to see him just like believe that there was something that he was working towards all those years, and not everyone believed him, but you know he totally made it to somewhere, and it kind of blew up. But so then there's this year that I think a lot of us have moments like this that we kind of attribute as a turning point or a pivot or a shift in what we were previously working towards. And for me, that year is 2009. At the beginning of that year, in February, I moved into a new apartment, and it was like my first official like apartment that I was paying for, because in college I had some help and stuff, and I had an apartment, but it wasn't the same. But I moved into this apartment, and within a week of being there, the whole building burns down. And it was like, I got out of there with my phone and my keys and my wallet, but I was okay. I turned around, I escape through the flames in the stairs. Like, it didn't seem that crazy when it was happening, but I turn around, and like the whole building, the whole roof above my apartment on the second floor is just engulfed. So I lose everything: my studio equipment, my music equipment, my clothing, all these little like memories and knickknacks and stuff like that. But it kind of made for this interesting time of having like one outfit to wear, and like I'm saying this because I actually, like, looking back, it feels like a fun time. Oddly, it feels like, that was a fun time. I was like staying in other people's houses, and it was, it was sad and it was like traumatic, but at the same time it felt really simple. So then I kind of get back on my feet. Thankfully, my dad is in a good place, and he's pretty successful at this point, so he helped me get a lot of my gear. And I never had near as much as I did before that, but he helped me build the basics of getting gear again. And so I had this little guitar set up and all that, and very simple setup, and it allowed me to kind of start making music again. And before this, I was making kind of like what I would call aggressive not because I was like angsty, I just identified with like metal music, but it was kind of like happy metal music, if that makes sense. Like I don't have like systemically, I don't have that much to like be really upset about personally. So I think I was just like kind of expressing general emotion through metal. You know, I don't know. So after the fire and I get my new gear, it kind of, I think the trauma of the fire kind of brought me into a more introspective, like kind of serious place with my music. And I noticed it started to be more ethereal and more, like I said, introspective and reflective. And so I started writing some new music and it felt really good and it was feeling really special. And then I finally get back on my feet in about May. I get a new apartment. Thanks to my dad, he really helped me out a lot. And then June 28th, 2009, my dad passed away in his sleep. He was 50 years old. Kind of at the peak of his career. Well, I don't know if it was really the peak, but he was on The Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien, like the week he died, and I was there with him. And it was just like a really potent time for him, and he just passed away. So I remember that kind of being like horrible, but at the same time, it was kind of something that forced me to adapt in a way that I'm really thankful for. So when I talk about it and I look back, I've kind of started to like let go of all the, man, that sucks kind of things, because it really set my life to this spot right now. So to finish out that year, I kind of had to go through a lot of like catharsis and loss, but I found the therapy in music, and I finished what I was working on before he died and decided that it was going to be this album called Gently, which is what was playing as we all walked in. And it's a really special album. It got used in a lot of the tribute material to his death on Discovery Channel and stuff like that. So I think a lot of people married it to kind of the laughs and the tears of remembering someone, which I did as well. And so then, 2009 to now is all about like taking that further. And I realized slowly that this is really what I want to do. This is what I've been like kind of wanting to do my whole life, but I didn't know until that moment. And then since then, it's kind of been a process of like realizing more and more the possibilities and finding the confidence to just take steps. And in that time, I think what really made it possible to be in this position right now where you're all kind of looking at me like waiting for some nugget, And I should say this, by the way. I was like trying to put together a talk about serendipity, and I was trying to like meticulously map it out, and I couldn't. It wasn't working. It felt really stale, and it felt like if I don't go in there and like allow for something serendipitous to happen, then it's like it's not going to be authentic. So if anything brilliant happens in this time, it's probably because of that. But also if anything doesn't make sense, it's because of that too. So I just want to warn you of that. If anything seems like I'm jumping around or tangents or whatever. But this is kind of the thing that I found is that when I perform my music, it's 90% improvisation, and that is a process that I arrived at because I used to try to plan it. Like, I'm going to be in front of people. I got to give them something that really like speaks to them. And I tried to control it so much and manipulate the moments. And I always felt this tension around that kind of stripped it of what was good about it, which was the kind of the authenticity, the vulnerability. And so I slowly realized that, excuse me, serendipitous moment right there. Okay. So I just slowly realized that like that's something that I have to do is kind of put myself in those positions and kind of invite the serendipity to happen, even though it's always happening, blah, 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 all that stuff we're dreaming. But there's something I found about kind of just letting go of like what I think is going to happen to allow for what, it sounds so cliche saying it, but maybe that's the problem I have is I try to dance around these cliches. But I let go of what was supposed to happen and I find this new thing that I had no idea was going to happen, and it is much better than what I had planned. And so fast forward, we're here. I improvised my way here, and I'm improvising my way through here right now. And I think that like when I had to think of like, well, what's the core like, message of this? And I think it is just kind of welcoming the moments that force you to adapt and kind of mess you up, and I used to get really like tense as soon as something would go wrong, and it was like a tension that would happen, and then I wouldn't know what to do next, and it would kind of make me kind of detach from the whole thing. But I've noticed, compared to when I first started doing stuff like publicly to now, something that I've noticed about my reaction that's changed is maybe because of my experience with those mistakes and those moments, is that when something happens or I mess up or stumble or something goes wrong with gear, my first reaction is like a smile, even if it's like an inner smile. It's like, okay, oh, it kind of stirred me awake. And I like to think of it as like what I'm trying to do with the Remember Your Dreaming cards and stickers is kind of stir people into a moment of like, oh, like I wasn't expecting this in my day, and now they're like hopefully looking at other things, thinking, what else am I not noticing? And so I get to these live sets and I find myself smiling like, okay, we're on to something now because we made a mistake, like something's going horribly wrong. So I'm gonna look back at this one, I'm gonna tell the story, and it's gonna be like, man, I'm so glad that messed up stuff happened, because obviously it gives you lessons. I think we can all relate that, you look back at your mistakes and you find lessons in them, right? And you find insights and all that. But I kind of am on a point where maybe when I'm doing these things or I'm out in public that I'm trying to foresee the lesson that I'll learn in a way and kind of not be afraid to tank or whatever, as you could probably tell. Or maybe I tank sometimes and it's just like keep going. But I think that's the point too, is like to just kind of to trust those things that seem really like, and I say this being like, when my dad died, I was like, no, he didn't. Like, I don't like this. I don't want this to happen. I started like arguing with it. But I do remember a moment when I got the call in the morning, and I remember kind of like, having that reaction that was just like, holy shit, and kind of like falling to the ground or whatever. But I remember like 2 minutes later having the reaction of like, okay, this is obviously the path that I'm supposed to be on, or I don't want to say I'm supposed to be on, but this is the path. And that, I think, helps kind of make me at least walk through it, even if it was emotional and tore me up a lot. Looking back, I think that maybe I knew that this was like, the only way through this is to accept it in a way, because the more I fight it, the more I want to stop it and push it away, the more it's going to just not flow, and I'm not going to be in the place that I need to be with it. So maybe I've kind of adapted all that to the performance. I didn't mention what this is, but we'll see in a minute. So I just think that it sounds easy to say, like, trust these mistakes and everything, and I understand that there are traumatic moments that warrant emotional responses. But I think maybe in that time trailing from these moments, it's okay to find things that could possibly be, you already start to know the ripple effect that happens. For instance, let's say my dad dies and I instantly connect with people based on their dad dying. It feels really like, okay, well, this is a positive thing that's already coming from this. And I know it doesn't rescue that moment, but you can start seeing all these things around you that you could call serendipitous. By the way, there was a word that I tried to go to called synchronicity. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this word. And I looked that up, and it's a term that Carl Jung kind of appropriated for his studies. And I liked it because the connotation of it for me was about it kind of implied to me that there was some kind of bigger thing happening, and this was all synchronized, all of it, and then we just had to like find the synchronicities. Whereas serendipity made it sound like, oh, it was like we stumbled in here and we floated in and it was just perfect. I don't know how it happened. So I was gonna kind of go like, let's throw out serendipity and use synchronicity, but I don't know. Carl Jung kind of took it and made it his thing, and I don't want to go into that world of that, any controversy or anything like that. So just remember that word when you're looking for a different word than serendipity to use. Well, how synchronistic, you know? Because if you think about it, we're all synchronized right now. We're like literally lined up. Your ears can hear my voice, and there's this like synchronous thing happening. And it implies time as well, so I really like it. I don't know. Etymology is awesome too, isn't it? Like that somebody like said one of those random things one day, and it just became part of our vocabulary. I think it's amazing, and it kind of demonstrates itself serendipitously. Like someone heard it and was like, "What did you just say?" And then they start using it in their vocabulary. And I love when that happens, when a friend starts using a phrase and you're like, "Huh, never really thought of it that way." And then And then I start using it, and I'm like, yeah, what would I do without that phrase? I bet we can all kind of appreciate that. So to kind of like tie this all together, my other music project, I talked about Infinite Third. That's guitar-based. It's kind of my personal catharsis that I kind of process emotion through, and it's a practice. It feels like a martial art sometimes, and it's all very improvisational. And so there's this other project that we're gonna do right now, and it's called Mouth Council. And I look at it as kind of this kind of stripped down version of everything that I'm talking about. It's literally we're gonna come together, a group of us are gonna come together in a circle surrounding this loop station, and I'm gonna start a little beat with my mouth, and then I'm gonna pass the microphone around to those people, and they're gonna do whatever they're feeling in that moment, and we're gonna make music out of it, which I'm gonna start setting up as I talk about it. So, okay. So the thing about this, first of all, let's bring people up. So here's what I'm gonna do. You saw that your name tags had a question on it. The third thought.
Some of you didn't answer it.
Did you not answer? Are you serious?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So this was a question we came up with to try to get people to be creative about which animal they put on their thing, because we didn't want to put like, what's the first animal that pops in your mind, and people would be like, cat. And no offense to people who put cat. I saw a few cats. Maybe that's the third animal you thought of, which is actually creative in its own right, because you didn't go straight to the easy one. So then we found out that there's a principle in, I think it's mainly in like screenwriting. You know, if you're kind of like coming up with ideas for a character or a plot, there's a concept called the third thought, which is the first thought is what everyone thinks of, the second thought is what only a few think of, and the third thought is what only you think of. So we thought it was cool that, and infinite third, you know, there's some subliminal. So we thought it was cool to arrive at that, and now you're all kind of with these random animals on your sticker. So to tie in serendipity, we've been doing a lot of serendipitous things with this too, by the way. Tara's been killing it. We had like a party where we're throwing darts at numbers, and then the numbers correspond to names. We're doing like this weird mug pong with names in the, so we really, that's how you got here, was by us throwing shit around and, you know, kind of just having fun with each other. We did a game where like you throw the big donut, and like people have to be the thing that catches it, and each person represented like one of you. So I thought that was like really genius. So that's how we're all here today. Well, not me, but I've probably serendipitous how I got here too. But yeah. Oh yeah, that's true. A good story, by the way. Good narrative, creative use of the narrative of your dream, by the way. Okay, so what we decided is that these animals, first of all, did anyone choose the animal that I chose? Antelope. Okay, good. No, good. So that's that. I went somewhere. Actually, I chose antelope in a different serendipitous way. We were like, oh, so if I choose antelope, like weeks ago, then well, that'll be the one that wins whatever. And so I got here today and I was like, I gotta just choose antelope. It was like serendipitous back then, so I'll use it now. So now I'm just gonna go to another animal, and a goose.
I saw a mongoose. We can count that.
Let's count mongoose. Okay.
Who's mongoose?
All right, count mongoose. All right, there's one. All right. Okay, mongoose. Hyena? No? Wow, okay.
I have to go domestic.
No.
People are tired.
No. All right, hold on. I'm gonna go with the third thought. Sloth. We got one, okay. So come up. Do you wanna come up? Well, you can stand for now. We'll okay. You coming up, sloth? Slowly. Okay. Okay. So the point of this, the first point of this was that, so since, oh, you got two sloths? Perfect. This is it. Okay. So we got sloth, we got mongoose, which was based on goose, and no hyena, no antelope. Wow. Okay. So the point of this, first of all, was that you guys win something. I'm going to give it to Todd because he's the mongoose. You're going to get the 4-pack of made coffee. Yay. So then, And then all three of you are just gonna get, oh, he has it right there. That doesn't look like a 4-pack of coffee, but okay. So everyone, I'm gonna give you just my music, CD, USB drive, and a copy of my book, which is a poetry book that I released back in December. And so yeah, you guys will have that. Now come over here if you want. Are you cool with this? Do you want to like be a part of this? Yes. Just come on, okay. Okay. So just because we're here, I'm gonna call up my friend Ariel here. And is there anyone else that like really feels like they want to be up here right now? Jimmy? Okay. All right, let's have 2 Creative Mornings speakers, and then that's it. Okay. So everyone kind of sit in a circle. If you're cool sitting on the floor. Oh, yeah. We have like a foreign exchange creative morning person. He's like, who is this guy? He sounds awesome. I should talk to him.
Someone else from Vienna? And his name's also Sebastian.
Okay. So, is my mic still on? Yeah? Okay, good. Yeah. I think so. Okay. Oh, it wasn't. Wow. Oh, okay, cool. Okay. Okay, so I think you get it enough that we can kind of just go into this. Sorry, that's me. My fault. Oh, see the smile? Okay. Don't let it ruin your day. Okay, so this all started based on what I was talking about before. This kind of just feels like a microcosm of everything we're talking about, which is you kind of just have to like commit to the thing, knowing that you might make a mistake, and then you'll probably do something weird, and it's gonna be perfect. Like, you're gonna be like, oh no, I don't know what to do. And it's gonna be like, oh no, I don't know what to do. Oh, no. And it's gonna be cool. But you kind of have to trust me, and you kind of have to trust everything, and trust. You have to trust. So, and I have to trust as well. So, the other thing I like to say, based on the animal thing, one thing I like to say, if you can't think of anything, you're totally free to just pass it to the next person. That's kind of like an act in itself. The silence of it is you felt that there was nothing to add from you at that time. But if you don't feel like, or if you don't know what to do, but you want to do something, just make an animal sound. It'll be good. I think that goes for in life a lot too. You can kind of just, maybe not everywhere, but not like in a meeting. You're just like, caw-caw! You know? I don't know if that'll work. It might work at the roundhouse. In a roundhouse meeting, because if you go into like a velociraptor, everyone will be like, yeah, I like this person. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Is that on? Okay.
Serendipities, serendipity, 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 serendipity. Serendipity, 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 serendipity,
Petersburg.
serendipity,
In St. Petersburg. In St. Petersburg.
Coming together, coming together, coming together, coming together, coming together.
In St. Petersburg. Creative Mornings. Creative Mornings. Creative Mornings. Creative Mornings. Petersburg. Creative Mornings. 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 Creative
You bring out the animal.
Serendipity. Serendipity.
Now put your hands up. Now put your hands up. Now put your hands up.
Serendipity.
So yeah, you get that. It's kind of like up to chance, and we don't know what's gonna happen. I hope it was coherent enough, but you guys killed it, by the way.
Thank you for letting me participate in that. That is my most fun thing that I like to do lately. So I just wanted to ask you, how has your creative process changed over the past 7 years? You had this event that happened to you that kind of really fulfilled your creative spark, and that really helped drive your songwriting and your music making. How has that changed in the past 7 years?
I think there was a time. I think what that event did they were talking about was it kind of made me rediscover what I was already doing, which was making music. I was always into making albums in like high school and stuff. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I would share them with my mom and stuff. And I really like sequencing albums and making music and stuff like that. But it helped me marry my emotional life to the creative thing I was always doing. So I think in that sense, it kind of like made me realize that all this time when I thought, and maybe my inner voice was kind of like not sold that I was actually good at it yet. And then I think something about it becoming more personal helped me realize that it's kind of beyond good and bad. It's like, is it fulfilling or is it is it sustainable is a question that kind of, I think, has driven it. It's like, how do I make it sustainable? And I think the improvisation part is what makes it sustainable, is that it, instead of growing stale or me getting bored with it, I set all the processes up now. I see far ahead enough to know that I'm going to get bored if I make it this like dead thing that I just have to do. But when it's all left up to the, the audience or the room, I like to be influenced by the people around. I think it makes for like a discovery for all of us, rather than just me saying, here's what I've done, and that doesn't feel as fulfilling to me. But maybe just in the long term, I do like sharing things that are pre-made. But I think the answer to your question is that I think it just kind of brought out like the necessity of what I was doing to process and as therapy and catharsis. And so that was the spark that we're talking about. It made it cathartic, and then that brought it into like, I need to do this, rather than like I just like doing it.
So I've been present for a few of your ambient installations, and they're really powerful experiences. I don't know, has anybody been present for ambient installations with Billy? Anybody? Awesome.
Okay. So it's this thing I do where I play guitar, my guitar setup and everything, but I play for like 4 hours, and I do them in different spaces around town. I did one here, literally where I'm standing right now, and people can just come and go as they want. And it kind of, instead of it being like a show, I encourage people to kind of relax or draw or read a book or even just talk to each other or whatever. And it makes for some really intense, like, I say intense, but like, you chill in like a really intense way, because everyone's kind of like, alone together, like kind of, you're not just alone, and you're not like fully together, because you have the option to just kind of tune out or tune in or, stretch if you want. So that's what she's talking about.
Yeah, it's really powerful. I feel like we all just get to be human animals together, and people end up just like touching each other and just like being. It's amazing.
Nobody ever touched me during them.
Yeah, you're performing. You're doing shit. You're busy. We don't want to distract you.
I think I got a back rub once, like for 10 minutes.
One time.
Yeah. Okay.
So I have this theory that there's like 3 different personalities. There's an artist, there's a healer, and there's a teacher. Mm-hmm. And these experiences are so powerful because, and I was just wondering if you are just showcasing your inner experience like an artist, or if like a healer you really perceive what's going on in others and you seek to reach out to them, or if you're seeking to elicit a certain reaction like a teacher. Or is it some kind of combination of all 3?
Wow, that's a good question. I think at first it was artist, straight up. It was just like, I don't know, this is what performers do. They go out and they play what they're playing, and it's like an audience, performer thing. And then I think because my music from the beginning, when I started playing it live about 6 years ago, was so cathartic for me, and it was like these kind of like, oh, I have to get up on stage, there's all these nerves, but then it all kind of processes out in the act. And I think because of that, a lot of people got a lot out of it, and somehow their thoughts would mirror what they needed for that situation that was like what I needed. And so I think people maybe started to have these like, as though I was a healer type thing, as though it was healing. And I was like, okay, cool. And I think maybe there was like a month where I was like, wow, I make healing music. And then I was like, oh, I don't like that, and I don't want to like be like, I don't want to start saying that I'm healing people, and I really don't like that. But then it was inevitable that I was like, that there was something happening that was healing. It was just healing for me, for everyone else, and maybe that's what made it healing, was that it was healing for me. So I think maybe that's the healing part of it. And then like the part where you say like to elicit a certain reaction, I think that is kind of what I've found in the presentation now. So the marketing and the ambient installation series, for instance, I started in February, but I had always been doing this, and I've always tried to find places to set up for a long time. A lot of my shows are kind of like an hour long, half hour, but I decided it would be best if I just plop down and play, and then we can get really deep into this thing, and you can kind of like draw, people like drawing to the music. So I think the presentation was what became like to elicit a reaction, like, let's call it an ambient, and I came up with a name, and it became a thing that, all of a sudden people were like, oh, I get this, I can just show up and do whatever I want. And it took me actually like prompting that to to make that how people saw it, even though some people saw it that way the whole time, like the OG fans, you know. But no, but yeah, I like the way you worded that, because I think that it's like saying, like, are you coming from a masculine place or a feminine place? And I love all like the archetypal type. I like all the archetypal things that go on in all of us, and I think the way you worded that is both good, and like I think the other thing is that we would all have those properties in us and that potential. So I think like maybe we embody them at a certain time. Like if you're a parent, you become one of them more so than, you know, if you're doing something that's not parental, or if you're a writer and you're actually doing the writing, maybe you're in just full like art mode and you're not thinking about, or maybe you are like you're doing the process of the healing, and then later on you're in the business mode, and all of a sudden you have to like elicit a reaction, or you become like an artist performer in the how you present it and everything. So I think what I got from that is that it's kind of best to just kind of embody everything if you can, and you know, if you like things about other people, you can kind of like be inspired by all of it and not look at them as like, oh, they're the artist over there. I'm the, you know, and I'm the business person. I think a big part of what helped me continue doing this and make it my living slowly is that I tried to not separate them all as much as I could. So when I put out a Facebook post and an ad, and I'm trying to get the word out about my ambient installation series, that to me feels like art. It's the same process. I'm trying to like, I'm doing all those things that you're talking about. I'm trying to experience it. Like for me, it's a process. So I think that it's best to just recognize all the hats you wear, but just wear them all at the same time or different times or whatever. And I say that about masculine and feminine too, because I really feel like I do a lot of feminine things, and I'm a man, masculine, identify as a man, and I do a lot of masculine things. But I think the balance of that is what makes me strong and able to do what I do at all in the first place. And so that's, I don't know how to, I just trail off in sentences and fade out. Okay. I get to use a fade out in music a lot, so I feel like if I'm like on a thought at the end of a track, and I always have the option where I can just, oh, that's cool, let's just hang on that, and then let's just fade it down like 45 seconds. But you know, sometimes the succinct like serendipity is good. So I should just be like serendipity. All right, cool.
Hey,
who we got?
First of all, great talk. I love the way that you like prepared to wing it, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. I really like the part that you talked about, you know, realizing a moment in your life that's like a turning point.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes like in the moment you don't realize it, and you don't realize it until like years later you're like, hey, I changed from that. Mm-hmm. And for you it seems like, you know, with the fire and with your dad and everything, that's huge. What do you think it is that like makes you realize that you just had a moment that's going to change your life? I know that's kind of like a super big question, but
I was reflecting on all this as I'm like preparing to wing it over the past couple of days, and I think what I noticed is a lot of it has to do with people. Like a lot of your moments are around people, other people, or just yourself, like the emotions. I think we're talking about like the emotional connection of things. So how emotionally connected you are to something, and that could mean trauma, or that could mean like falling in love, which could be traumatic when you look back at it. But I bet a lot of us have other people involved in our moments that are like turning points. And if not, it's you, and it's kind of you looking at yourself as an entity and like going through a thing. So I think there's something to be said about if we're all kind of having, like imagine how deep your story goes, and how unique and far down you could go, and it's like, wow, this is only my experience. And now imagine that everyone else has those going on too. It's like, I think that's why a lot of it has to do with people, is that we're literally like these things just dancing around and colliding, and it feels like planetary to me, that we're these like vast planets, and then we like kind of orbit around each other for a little bit, and that can cause a lot of gravitational pull and you know, I don't know, I'm trying to tie this to space somehow, but you know, we're all in space, whatever. But so I think there's obvious ones like death and the loss and grief. You can grieve about so many things, losing a job, or just like the end of a friendship, someone moving away. You can grieve about, I feel that sometimes I've had the potential for like, I release an album and there's like this postpartum depression that comes with it. I'm like, oh, like it's out there now and I can't do anything with it. And it's just like other people are like listening to it. And I totally get like on a much more serious scale why a mother might go through that and stuff like that. But so I think for me, loss and grief has to do with it, because the details that I left out of my story leading here, the other ones that popped to mind when I'm like, well, what else was there besides that year, and like what else was like that? And it was mostly breakups and things like that, like just disappointments and having expectations and it doesn't pan out. But so I think to answer your question, it's hopefully we're just like always having moments that are potentially connective emotionally, and that they would all kind of be like, oh, maybe this moment right now is, the moment you met the person sitting next to you, and you look back and you're like, wow, that person like really affected me in the long run. And so there could be that. So serendipity.
Hey, so I have 2 questions, but it's like an either or. No, it's if you don't have an answer for one, because it's one of those on the spot ones. It was going to be, has anything ever happened that was really impactful when doing a mouth council or doing an installation that you were like, oh shit, that was crazy? But because that's a kind of on the spot question, the other option.
No, I like that one. I like that one. We can go with that.
Okay, you like that?
Well, I'll give a quick story real quick. I'm going to try to be really quick with this one. To go with the healing and what Infinite Third is, and a lot of people have had like really explosive reactions to it, and they're like crying at the end of it, and they come up to me and they're like, oh my God, I needed that. Like, what did you do? And so I'm at a festival one time playing in a chapel in West Virginia, in the mountains of West Virginia, and there's like a full room of people in pews, and I'm just like doing my thing. So this guy from another band before the set was like, hey, I'm gonna, or do you mind if I come and jam with you? And I was like, totally, because I kind of put that out there to some of the musicians. Do you mind if I like jam with you at the end of your set? Because that's kind of the vibe that happens at this festival. So I was like, yes. So I'm doing my thing, and we're going through the waves of the music, just me. And then I see the guy out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, okay, now at this time I'm gonna bring up my friend Blank to drum. So he gets on his little hand drum over here, and I start like looping and starting a little rhythm. I usually lead it anyway. And it starts happening, and he just like kind of like freezes, and he's just like, and I hear him like hitting the drum a couple times, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And so I just keep going, and the next thing I know, he starts like kind of convulsing, but not like in a seizure way, like in kind of a fainty way, and he just kind of like falls over, and he's like, and he does this intense thing where he like does an animalistic thing on the stage, and it's all just happening over here, and I'm still playing though. I did the math in my head, and I was like, he's obviously having a moment. He ends up like on the ground, like breathing, and somebody that knew me like goes up to him and starts like offering him water, and I can tell he's like okay, he's just having like a really intense thing. So I keep playing, and I like finish the thought of the music, and I'm sitting there. I did the math, and I was like, if I stop this and be like, yo, dude, are you okay? Like, it might be traumatic for everyone, including him. So I calculated this, and I was like, no, I'm gonna slowly fade out. Maybe he needs this arc. And I slowly like do my thing where I wash out the tones, and it's like becomes this, like it all goes into this one thing, and it slowly fades. And I'm just like, and everyone's like everyone in the crowd, like half of them are like totally just looking at him, and half of them are like, okay, this is like part of the show, I think. So I fade it all out, and I'm like, whew. And he's sitting up by now, and I'm like, do you want to share anything about your experience? And I opened up the floor to him, and he says what happened. And what happened was he was kind of like, in his words, he had to like let go of some demons, and he was experiencing the tattoo that he had on his arm, which was an animal, came out, and he assumed the animal's form. And I know this sounds so crazy. Later I find out that he drank mushroom tea about an hour before this performance, which I don't know if I would have invited him up on stage if I knew that, but at the same time it made for one of the most impactful performances of my life, where I felt like this shamanistic like vibe, which the weird thing about this, about being in West Virginia, was that after, I mean, I almost don't want to say this because they're going to know who I'm talking about if they see this ever, but someone came up to me after and was like, they were very serious, and they're like, my name's blank, I actually perform exorcisms in the area, and I think your music would be perfect for these sessions. And she didn't even know what was going on with him and everything. And I'm like, am I like this character now that's just like the demon slayer, you know? And I really like that idea that I could be that, and I wouldn't have to be like, you know, associating with any religion. I could just like, yeah, I totally wasn't going for that, but cool, you know, I was actually just kind of like in my own world. I wasn't thinking about your demons, but. So yeah, that's the most impactful, I think. Okay, so I told Tara that I was like, okay, my book, the more I talk about this stuff, my book kind of like, it's poetry. It's a poetry book. We have copies out there if you want one. I realized that it kind of is the poetic version of my message, and it's something I wrote over the past couple of years. And a lot of the things like remain relevant to me as time goes on. But this one I thought was serendipitous in that it was kind of, in the middle section of the book here, they're kind of a tangent about a couple poems in a row that are kind of about the creative process and my creative process. And I realized this one is kind of about like waking up in the morning and like not feeling creative, but then like you feel creative again, like what stirs you back in. And I remember this poem being about the process that I was going through of like, I just want to write, but I don't feel it, but I'm just going to write about not feeling it, and then this is what came from it. So I was just going to read it. It's really short. And, okay. So, sometimes it takes time for the body to settle into the day. In the mornings jarred awake from worlds I never chose to create. Somewhere in this process, the mind looks for mistakes. Something in the sensations makes a thought forget to dissipate. I am within this as surely as I am without. Rhythm finds the words just as it dances me from doubt. No rhyme could define this moment's design, so I shake free from comfort, embracing mystery only to find that the unknown feels familiar. And instantly, I'm riding that obvious frequency, hovering steadily between freshness and consistency. So that's that. I thought it was, thanks. It touched on the mornings, it touched on the dreams that I woke up from, it touched on kind of the mistakes, and it touched on the freshness and consistency, which is that like kind of, it feels consistent, but it's very much winging it, preparing to wing it. I like that. So thank you for letting me read that.